What's the Delia? The Delia is back for another day reading through the Gospels for our 30-day Gospel reading challenge. I sit down with you guys every day for 30 days and we read through and we power through all 4 books of the Gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in 30 days. And Merry Christmas! Today is Christmas for me, not for you who's watching it, but we are recording on Christmas and we are going through the book of John. So we are in John 10, 11, and 12 today. And before we dive in, I would like to thank our wonderful, awesome sponsor, our newest sponsor, our best sponsor, our only sponsor. But we officially have a sponsor who is 7 Weeks Coffee. 7 Weeks Coffee brand is a pro-life coffee brand because at 7 weeks, a child's development is the size of a coffee bean. And it's the first time that a heartbeat is detectable on an ultrasound. So 7 Weeks Coffee, they partner with pregnancy centers all across America to provide women with free ultrasounds if they're in the middle of making that decision for themselves. And a woman who sees and hears their baby's heartbeat is 50% more likely to choose life in that decision. So if you want to join the fight for life, use the code What's the Delia for 10% off, discount, and free shipping on your first order. The link will be in the description as well as on my channel bio. So feel free to use that. It's really great coffee. Really glad to be in support of that. So let's dive in, shall we? Because we are well on our way. We're almost done with this series. It's been such a roller coaster and such a ride, and it's been so fun to see my own development and hear my own confidence growing in what I'm reading and what I'm learning in all of my research. I think I've said this before. We don't partner with, but we utilize Enduring Word. It's a free biblical commentary app. And I highly recommend it if you want to learn more about the scriptures as you're reading, but we're going to go through it. We start out with chapter 10, and Jesus is talking about the Good Shepherd himself. Okay, Jesus is the Good Shepherd. He is the legitimate shepherd who he claims comes in the right way. Now, there is what he says a gate for his sheep. There is a doorway, there is a path to take to get to the sheep, which, like, we are the sheep. We are the silly, stupid, dumb animals that can't seem to follow the right path. But we need a shepherd who will lead us and who guide us and protect us. And that person needs to come in through the gate. The gate is there for the reason of just like seeing who the right person is. You know, he says that a thief and a robber will be the person who jumps over the gate, who comes in even when it's locked, who tries to steal and kill and destroy. And so it's this big contrast between him and the Pharisees. You know, he's always kind of given shade to the Pharisees because the Pharisees are the kind of thieves and robbers that, you know, claim to have this shepherd title over the people, but they've gotten it through manipulation and through like just illegitimate ways is how they have come. They've used corruption and just all these fancy titles and these fancy robes to try and be the right shepherd, but they are leading the people away from Jesus. And Jesus is there to say, you know, I'm here to lead you. And he says in verse 10:10, my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life, an abundant life. Now, the thing about an abundant life is it doesn't mean that we're going to live a long life. It doesn't mean we're going to live a rich life. It doesn't mean that we're even going to live a happy life. There will be suffering, regardless of whether or not you know Jesus, but there is an inherent peace, a satisfactory in Jesus, in knowing that no matter what, there is peace. Sorry, my cats are going crazy as they always do. And during my research, I found this commentary from a man named Adam Clarke. Adam Clarke was a Irish theologian who lived in the 17 and 1800s. And he kind of summarized these 6 marks, so these 6 different truths about Jesus and how he is the true shepherd. And that is through proper entrance. So we talked about that. He's led by the Holy Spirit. So he submits to the Father. The sheep respond to his voice. This is a really important factor here too, is that he says, I know my own sheep and they know me. They hear my voice, basically. And in literal terms, a shepherd can call out to his sheep a very distinct calling that the sheep will respond to, and they won't respond to other people's voices. That's how intimate that relationship is, which is the 4th mark too, is this personal relationship. He knows us by name. And he calls us, they will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. The fifth mark is that he leads without lording over. That's the difference there, is like he will lead us and he will not give us these unrealistic rules and regulations for us to abide in like the Pharisees have. And the sixth mark, can you guys not? Please stop. Is he goes before them as an example. And he says this in he says this towards the end where he says, no one can take my life from me, verse 18. I sacrifice it voluntarily for them. He goes before us and he explains to us, and he's explaining to the Pharisees here, that he has that power over life and death and that he's willing to lay it down for us. So I sacrifice my life for the sheep, verse 15. So that's kind of that first section of chapter 10. And he's giving this just very clear picture to us about sheep and shepherds. And that's something that the people can really understand in this time. And when he says all of this, afterwards, the people were kind of divided. And this is always what happens when Jesus is talking. They're divided in their opinions about him. And people, again, are insulting him, calling him a demon, but then they're questioning it. And they're like, well, can a demon open the eyes of a blind man? Like, they don't understand. And so after that, we see this time of what's called the Festival of Dedication. It's Hanukkah. So it's this festival rededicating the temple in accordance with this 3-year terror on the Jews after the attack on Jerusalem. I forgot the timeline exactly, but Antithesis just really destroyed the Jewish people, attacked them, murdered a lot of people. There was a lot of just like corruption at this time. And so this is a festival that the Jews are having the time of Hanukkah, and this is the winter. So it's really in accordance with the time of the year that we're in right now. He was in the temple and he was walking along this section, and all of a sudden he's bombarded. Okay. And the people were surrounding him and they're asking him, how long are you going to leave us in suspense? If you really are the Messiah, tell us plainly. And I read that and I'm thinking, okay, well, they just want to know, but how many times have they asked this? How many times have we heard throughout these Gospels that they're asking Jesus over and over, give us a sign, tell us. And he's like, how many times do I got to tell you guys? And the truth is that they're not really asking in an authentic way. They're asking in this deceitful and untrustworthy way where they want a sign. The people want what they want for themselves so that they can believe. Whereas Jesus, like, he's not really annoyed. He doesn't really give. Well, he says, I've told you already and you don't believe. The proof is in the work I do in my Father's name, but you don't believe me because you are not my sheep. Okay, so it kind of is annoyed. I don't like to say that Jesus is annoyed, but he is not the problem. Okay, the problem is the religious leaders, is the people who have this unbelief, and they are upset that they have the unbelief, so they're projecting onto Jesus, and they're saying it's his fault because he hasn't given them enough signs. Like, it's so, for lack of a better terms, ass backwards. It makes me laugh. And we kind of wrap up chapter 10 in this section where he's really declaring his unity with with God. And he's quoting this psalm from Psalm 82, where it's saying that it's written in your own scriptures that God said to certain leaders of the people, I say you are gods. And so he's saying, if it's telling you in this scripture that these unfair judges in the time of King David were declared gods by God, they were given this right to judge man and have, the fate of the men's lives in the hands of these judges. So they were technically gods because they were judging sin. How can you say that Jesus, who has done 100 times more than what any of the judges or any people on earth, any prophets have ever done, can have less authority than God? It's like he's saying, if you're believing these scriptures, then why do you call it blasphemy when I say I'm the Son of God? After all, the Father set me apart and sent me to the world. Don't believe me unless I carry out my Father's work. But if I do his work, believe in the evidence of the miraculous works I have done, even if you don't believe in me, and then you will know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. So he's just reiterating over and over again, I've done so many miracles and signs. Like, how can you not believe? And if you're not going to believe in me, at least believe in the fact that I've been doing these works and miracles and they are sent from the Father. But they did not like this, okay? They picked up stones and they were about to stone him because he kept saying to what them was blasphemy, was this, you're saying you are equal to God, and nobody can say that except Jesus. And again, his work, it was not a work of selfishness. He always worked in this good and selfless way, and he always glorified God. So there was never this spot on his reputation. I mean, hence the fact that he was the spotless lamb, but he had a very clean reputation of being who he said he was, and they just were not having it. And so they tried to stone him, but he left. He went across the Jordan River. A lot of people followed him, and there were a lot of people there who started to believe in him. And that's where we end chapter 10. We go into chapter 11 with the seventh miracle. So like we've said in the beginning, John has 7 miracles that solidify the truth and deity of Jesus as the Son of God. And here we see him raising Lazarus from the dead. We saw in the previous Gospels that he did raise 2 other people from the dead during his life here on earth, his ministry and his life here on earth. He could have raised other people, but the 3 that we know of are Lazarus, Jairus' daughter, and the widow's son. But here we're just seeing Lazarus, and it's a story of delay, not denial. Even though it seems in the words it'll be denial, it is delay and in trusting in God, and it just showcases faith again. So the story of Lazarus is that Mary and Martha, who we've already seen previously, are these sisters, and they have a brother named Lazarus. And Lazarus is sick. Jesus was in the area. He was a few miles away from where they were. They were in Bethany, and he was in Jerusalem. And so they sent word to Jesus. Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus and said, Lazarus is sick. And Jesus hears about it, but he says to his disciples, his sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this. It's ironic because he says it will not end in death, even though we see he decides to have this delay in going and visiting. And instead he waits, and finally he says, let's go back to Judea. Let's go back to the Bethany area. And this is the area, mind you, in the last chapter that he was just trying to get stoned in, okay? So his disciples were like, yo, you're about to get stoned again. Like, why would we go back there? And he's explaining that there are 12 hours of daylight a day. During the day, people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night, there is danger and stumbling because they have no light. Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, and now I will go wake him up. And they really thought he fell asleep. They were like, and they said, okay, well, if he's just sleeping, then he'll get better. But he told them very plainly, Lazarus is dead. Again, ironic because he just said back in verse 4, Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. They don't know what's about to happen. Okay, it's not ended yet. Just because he is dead doesn't mean it's ended. Okay, it's foreshadowing. We love it. And so basically when he says that there's 12 hours, it's kind of his way of saying that there's an allotted time in a day to do work. And you have to do God's work within the time allotted. Otherwise, the opportunity will pass you by. And so, get done what God's done for you in the time allotted, basically. And so he goes back to Judea, and he sees Mary and Martha comes out, and everyone's weeping and wailing, and they're upset. Typically in this culture, they would hire people to come mourn for the family. Kind of a crazy side note, but yeah, everyone was just like over exaggerating. They understood that the more loud you were in your sorrow, the more love you had for them. But it's just kind of an interesting way of looking at things, whereas now I think the world is kind of in this understanding where everybody grieves differently. And some people can grieve in silence, and some people can grieve very loudly. It doesn't really determine the level of love that you had for the person. But either way, that's neither here nor there. I'm kind of going on a tangent. But Martha comes out and she sees Jesus and she said, where were you? My brother could have lived if you would have came. And he says, Mary, I am the resurrection of the life. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. And he's kind of testing her faith. And he says, do you believe? Do you believe in the Messiah? Do you believe in the resurrection? And she says, yes, he will rise when everyone rises. But Jesus is saying, I am the life. If he can rise later, he can rise now, period. And so they have this little encounter, and she calls to Mary. And Mary comes out, and we love what Mary does here. She falls at his feet. So we saw back in Luke 10 that she is the sister who's sitting at Jesus's feet while Martha is working and cleaning and everything. And Mary's sitting at his feet, and she's just absorbing everything, and she's learning. And here she sees Jesus and she falls at his feet. And it's this act of surrender for him, to him. And she's saying, Lord, if you've been here, my brother would not have died. And Jesus saw her weeping, and he saw all the other people weeping and wailing. And it says that he was filled with a deep anger. And that solidifies this understanding that anger is not a sin. It's what you do in anger that can cause you to sin. And then we see in this next verse that he asked them where Lazarus was buried, and they said, okay, come, we'll bring you to him. And then he wept. The shortest verse in all of Scripture, then Jesus wept. So not only is anger not a sin, weeping is not a sin, crying is not a sin, because Jesus did both of those things. They are feelings that indicate this connection to what the truth is. And it's not that Jesus didn't know the truth, but he was identifying yet again with humans. And he shows us that he knows our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers. He knows us so intimately, and he behaves like us, and he feels like us. So they bring him to the tomb. He tells them, roll the stone away. And they said, Lord, he's going to stink. Okay, this is going to smell. This is not going to smell good. And he doesn't even answer that. He just says, didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe? So they rolled the stone away, and he prays out loud. He says, Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I say it out loud for the sake of all these people who are standing here so that they will believe that you sent me. I mean, God knows our thoughts. He knows our prayers. He hears our hearts, but we will speak aloud so that others can bear witness. That's all it really is. It's just the whole purpose of all of this. We speak so that others can bear witness to the truth. And what does Jesus do? He just says, Lazarus, come out. He uses his word. His word is the power. His word is the truth. And yeah, that's just all that happens. After that, people start freaking out. Okay, there's two reactions always to Jesus when he starts saying and doing these things. And it's these people who instantly were there and they believed in him. And then there were these people that turned around, ran away, and went to tell the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were like, yo, what are we going to do? Because first they didn't believe in him because they didn't believe in him and all the signs and miracles. But now they don't believe in him because they do believe in him. They don't support him because they think, okay, now we know he's risen people from the dead, like he is who he says he is. But logically, if this is all true and he starts gaining followers, then they're fearful of Rome. They're fearful of Rome coming in and taking away the temple and like just causing this huge war. And there's a man named Caiaphas, yeah, sure, who was the high priest at that time. And he says, this really powerful verse 50, that says, don't you realize that it's better for you that one man should die for the people than for the whole nation to be destroyed? This was him giving a prophecy without even knowing it. Caiaphas really spoke what was going to happen in the next week to come without even realizing what was going to happen. And we see in the next couple verses, 51 and 52, that John emphasized that Caiaphas did not say this on his own accord, nor is the glory dedicated to him. It's always dedicated to God and to his high priest position, and that it led him to this understanding, without even him realizing it, that he was prophesying that Jesus would die for the entire nation. And even in a greater scale, it would bring together all the children of God all over the world. And so we kind of wrap up chapter 11 with the Pharisees locking in after he says that. They were like, all right, we thought we were trying to kill him and plot to kill him before. Now we're really going to plot to kill him before. And it's not that funny. It's just like, they really locked in. They were like, all right, we got to do what we got to do. And Jesus kind of knew, he felt this shift in the air. And so Jesus disappears. He goes into the forest. He stopped his public ministry for the time being, and he left Jerusalem. And he went to a place in the wilderness to be with his disciples. So everyone's really like locked and loaded. This is it. And we go into chapter 12. This is the last week of Jesus's ministry. And one of the comments about this was really powerful, is that we're only halfway through, okay? John's gospel dedicates 50% of his writings to this last week of Jesus's ministry. Whereas the other gospels, I mean, it's about 33% in Matthew, 40% in Mark, and a little over 25% in Luke. All to this last week. Like, that's just how crazy this week is for Jesus and all the things that he goes through. But we see in chapter 12, we start out with him back at dinner with Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. In Luke 7, we were told that this home that they were at is from Simon the leper. Not really indicated here, but just kind of a nice little tie together is that we do hear about this story and this time in other Gospels. And we see Mary giving another degree of devotion. And this is kind of her third way that she's devoting herself to the Lord. She takes perfume, this very expensive perfume, and she pours it all over his feet and she wipes it with her hair. And this is to give him honor. This is really powerful, and this is a really great act of humility for her. Because then Judas, who we later know will be his betrayer, gets very upset. He says, no, this could have been sold to feed the poor. And Jesus was like, stop. He was defending her. He's like, stop belittling her. What she's doing is a really good thing. And we see that in death in modern age, like day and age. You're never going to complain that somebody spent too much money on the flowers at the funeral or that they had too nice of a suit to bury him in. It's like they didn't understand what was happening, and he's clearly saying it straight up, like, she did this to anoint my body for burial. And they, everyone just kind of was like, oh, okay. And so when all the people heard that Jesus, we see in this next section, was coming into Jerusalem because the Passover is leading up, some people were excited, and then a lot of the Pharisees were like, all right, time. It's our time. Not only to plot to kill Jesus, but also to kill Lazarus, because we see that people who don't like Jesus are not going to like the people who Jesus blessed either. So we're leading up to that. We're going into Jerusalem. This is his great triumphant entry. This is where a couple more prophecies are fulfilled from Psalm 118 and from Zechariah 9:9, where Jesus rides in on a donkey instead of on a horse, because people believed that the great messianic prophecy would be this military man, and instead Jesus is coming in humility and in meekness, and they are waving their palm branches saying, Hosanna, blessings to those who come in the name of the Lord. They didn't really understand at the time, his disciples, that this was fulfilling prophecy, but we see, John writes that this is what he fulfills. And when he gets to Jerusalem, there were some Greek people who had heard about Jesus and who had come to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration. And so they went up to Philip, because apparently Philip is the only disciple with a Greek name, is what I learned. And they were asking they were like, we want to see Jesus. And Jesus says, okay, well, now the time of the Son has come for the Son of Man to enter into his glory. That's verse 23. And he's explaining why he is willing to face death and what going into his glory means, even though he's kind of explained it time and time again that he will be killed. He's explaining here, I like verse 24, that unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies, it remains alone, but its death will produce many new kernels, a plentiful harvest of new lives. This is the same thing as a follower. So if Christ's death plants a seed and sprouts new life and sprouts people coming to him, then his followers will indeed as well. And he also tells them, he's talking to his followers and he's saying, what is going to happen to me? If you want to serve me, you must follow me. And as we wrap up chapter 12, we see these last couple sections of people just being unsure. They still have unbelief. And he starts quoting a couple passages from Isaiah 53 and 6, 53:1 and then 6, 9 through 10, basically saying that if somebody believes in Jesus, it's because God's revealed it to them. But the unbelief that people feel towards Jesus is because God is going to strengthen you in your decision. He will hide things from you if you decide that you don't want it to be for you. Basically, it's the best way to put it is that he's emphasizing that it's your choice. Okay, that's what those scripture references are saying to the people, and how people did believe in Jesus. We see in verse 42 that a lot of people did start to believe in him, but they were afraid because they wanted to still be it was the leading priests who were afraid. They didn't want to be judged by people. It says they loved human praise more than the praise of God. It's a bit of a contradiction. And we finally wrap up all of our sections today, chapter 12 completely. We finish out our time today with this final appeal where Jesus is emphasizing all of his previous teachings that he's talked about. This is his last public words, the last time he speaks to the public, and he's standing in front of everybody. And this is like in Jerusalem. I don't know why I'm like kind of losing my place right now. But he's giving this tender final appeal. This is not like this big, believe me or else, but he's giving people a challenge. He's saying it's your choice to decide. I'm laying this out for you. And he's also giving a warning to those who choose not to decide and a promise to those who choose to decide, to believe in him. I feel like my words are not making sense right now. I hope that they are, because this is this final act of mercy. It's his final way of saying, the choice is yours. Oh, that reminds me of like middle school. Our principal used to say that over the intercom. The choice is yours. And when you're given the choice, God will strengthen you in your choice. And I hope that you choose Jesus, because it's a great day to give your life to him. And he is the way and the truth and the life. And that is today's section. That is the Delia. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.